I'm lucky in some regard. I went to Cretin High School. 1979 to 1980, he had his second stint at the high school. And I was a student there from 78 through 1981. And my first encounter with Brother James was I was going to my locker and he was working on a light fixture. And he had his tool belt on him. Many times he'd be wearing overalls, but I had heard he was a teacher. He taught English and Spanish. And I never had him in class, but I knew him as a man. He was working on this light fixture and he says, "Say, can you help me with this?" And I said, "What's going on?" He says, and he's holding a wrench and he's got a hammer and he's got this whole tool belt. He says, "Can you hand me that screwdriver?" So I handed him the screwdriver and he was working on the light fixture. And the funny thing was Brother James, he was kind of a little bit of a comedian in his own right. He had a sense of humor, it was subtle, but he's working on this light fixture and I'm going back to my locker and then classes are also coming in. You got all these other kids coming through the hallways and he's turning this fixture and somehow it gave him a little bit of a shock. Came right through the screwdriver and, it shook a little bit and he goes, there goes another screwdriver. I looked at it, I thought this guy was... Anyway, he had a sense of humor that I didn't quite expect. But the thing about Brother James, even though he was a teacher, Christian brother, he also did much of the maintenance that he really enjoyed doing for the school. And we always called him Brother James Fix-It. It was kind of the moniker, the name that he was affectionately known as. But that was my first exposure. I would have met him when I was a sophomore, toward the end of that year, going on junior year. And I eventually worked for the school newspaper. And I wish I had the article to show you, but it was basically, we were trying to interview different staff members on campus. And Brother James was interesting because we always heard that he would head back to Nicaragua. And eventually, when I knew him, he was working in Guatemala. And he would go to work with some of the children in that area. And he also did maintenance on much of their home life facilities. But he always loved going back. But one thing he said in an interview when I was a high school student is he said he never knew when he would have his last moments. And I was kind of taken aback by that. He was saying that it's kind of a volatile environment. What I learned later on in reading some of the literature on Brother James and his history is that there was a lot of government strife. And they were trying to bring young people into conscription into the military. And he, along with other brothers and lay people as well, were trying to keep those young people out of that environment so that they could get a decent education, also be able to escape some of the poverty conditions. But Brother James was always an advocate for seeing people succeed. And I think that somewhat spread among our high school, somewhat sheltered community in St. Paul. And he taught us a lot about what it's like in the real world. The things I saw in him: dedicated educator, person that truly cared about the students. But the amazing thing is that he could parallel his sense of wanting to be in the classroom. And in many cases, I heard he was some students' favorite teacher. But then he always wanted to return to his humble roots of just being able to take care of the daily operations of the school. And so, he would change from his teacher attire, if you may, to what he loved, those overalls and that tool belt. And I think he really liked that kinesthetic, let's work with your hands piece as well. So he kind of liked the balance of it all. It was hard to take at first because you just knew that you lost a really special individual, a person who tried to connect with people on just this idea that we all have human value. But yeah, I think it was 1982 when I'd heard that, and it stuck with me and resonated that, life is precious and very short. He's an individual that I think he would kind of shun it off and say, you know, I don't think I'm worthy of this. That's my sense with Brother James. He's an individual that when you think about just as people in today's kind of tumultuous environment with politics and all kinds of things that we're being exposed to, he would have seen through that and said, you know, we all just have human value. We all have something to give and to offer. And he encouraged that in the people around him, especially in the high school setting where I knew him. I'm just glad that, that Brother James is a Christian brother. And the Christian Brothers have a major legacy here at St. Mary's University, as well as the LaSallian community. And I'm glad that Brother James is even being recognized. He's a great example of somebody who lived his life with service, with dignity, and looked at the dignity and again, that value of other people in the world. That was so important to him. Regardless of just the United States, somebody from the Midwest who's being considered, we know, as a martyr, beatification, and then eventually possible sainthood. That's a joy for all of us here at St. Mary's.